The evening of March 3rd, 1801. John Adams was president. It was his last evening to be president. Thomas Jefferson was going to take over at noon on the next day. The bloodless revolution. No shots were fired. Nobody was assassinated. That's not to say that things didn't happen. Congress passed the Judiciary Act of 1801, and in the Judiciary Act, it had several parts, but one of the parts, important for our story, was that it added more judgeships to the federal government. Well, according to the Constitution, the President of the United States is the one who appoints federal judges. So Adams and his Secretary of State, John Marshall, who just happened to be the next Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. But Secretary of State John Marshall, the two of them, they got a list of Federalists, people on their side, right, of the equation, and they're going to give them the judgeships. So that night, the night before the transfer of power, John Adams and John Marshall are sitting there at the desk, and they're signing papers. They're signing Federalist names to these judgeships. And they put them in envelopes. And then at midnight, the game's over. John Adams puts his pen down, and the two of them walk out. And Jefferson's going to come in at noon the next day. Well, the game plan there was that those letters would be delivered to all the justices, and those justices would then become federal judges, and the Federalists would then have a lot of judges on the federal courts. And there's nothing that anybody can do about that, because once you're a judge on a federal court, you're there basically for life. The Constitution says during times of good behavior. So you're there for life. March 4th comes, and here comes Thomas Jefferson. President Jefferson walks in the door with his Secretary of State, James Madison, and they see these letters in these envelopes on the table, on the desk. Well, he's the president, so he's going to open a letter, and he opens it up, and he realizes that this is a letter for a judgeship that already has the seal on it, it already has the signature on it, it already is ready to go, they just have to mail it out. And Jefferson sees that it is a judgeship for a Federalist, not a Democratic Republican like Thomas Jefferson is. So Jefferson and Madison, they open up all the letters. There's 16 of them or so. And Jefferson says, "You see what that dirty slime bald dirt bag did last night? He and his buddy John Marshall, they tried to railroad these judges in." Of course, Madison said, but Mr. President, I mean, the seal is on them and the signature's on there. Technically, we have to deliver these, right? And Jefferson said, "Well, a couple of these guys I actually kind of know, and I kind of like them, so we're going to go ahead and let those go. And there's a couple of these are Federalists, but they're not terrible guys, so I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and deliver these letters. But here's this one guy, and I just can't stand him. His name is William Marbury. William Marbury is a justice of the peace, so he's a minor judge, and he was selected to be a federal judge by John Adams. Thomas Jefferson took that letter and said, "Nope," and he threw it in the trash. Two or three weeks later, the judges were all getting all the judges were getting their letters, and they were being congratulated. William Marbury went to find John Marshall. John Marshall, who is now the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. John Marshall, who was there at the desk with John Adams that night. William Marbury went to John Marshall and said, "Hey, all my buddies, they're all getting their letters. I haven't got my letter yet." Marshall says, well, that's weird because I remember specifically your letter. I mean, we put the stamp on it. Everybody signed their name, so it should be in the mail. It should be in the mail. Marbury says, well, I haven't seen it yet. So a little more time goes on, and Marbury goes back up to Marshall and says, hey, I haven't got my letter yet. Marshall says, well, I don't know what to tell you, dude. We put, I mean, everybody else got their letters. I don't know. Tell you what, go ask James Madison, Secretary of State James Madison. So William Marbury goes to Secretary of State James Madison and says, Madison, all these other judges, they got their letter in the mail, but I didn't get my letter. Do you know why? And Madison says, yeah, we threw it away. Jefferson, we don't like you, so we threw it away. And Marbury said, what? You can't throw it away. It had the seal, the presidential seal, and it had the signatures on it. And Madison said, oh, yeah, we threw it away. You're not going to be a judge, dude. So William Marbury obviously gets all freaked out about this. He runs over to his friend, John Marshall, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and he says, hey, here's what just happened. And John Marshall, Federalist, says, man, that Madison, that Jefferson, low-down, dirty dogs, I hate those Democratic Republicans. Well, what are you going to do, Marbury? And Marbury says, what do you mean? You're the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. You need to handle this. So John Marshall tells his good friend, William Marbury, do this. You need to sue Madison for not mailing your letter. Marbury versus Madison, 1803. You need to sue Madison for not mailing your letter. So Marbury says, okay, cool. I can do that. And of course, Marshall says, as Chief of the Supreme Court, you know how I'm going to vote. So Marbury says, yeah. Let's do this. So wait, I have to start at the district court, and I got to go to the appellate court, and I got to go to your court, right? So it's going to take a couple of years. And Marshall says, or there's this little addition in the Judiciary Act of 1801 that said something to the effect of, or in 1789, that talks about the writ of mandamus. So a writ of mandamus is when you take your case to a higher court. The court it mandates you to bring your case to them. And so Marbury can ask for a writ of mandamus to go directly to the Supreme Court and skip all the other courts like everybody else has to go to. Well, of course he can, because his buddy is John Marshall, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And sure enough, they go to the Supreme Court, Marbury versus Madison. And Madison, he admits, I threw it away. I threw the letter away. And so, you think this is an open shut case, right? But here's why we're talking about this case. Because this is arguably the most important case. No, it's not arguably. It is the most important case of all Supreme Court cases, because it establishes a very important part of how the government works. Marshall shows up and he's about to give his decision. So in his decision, and all the people there in the Supreme Court, and he's going to read his decision. And he's going to say, everybody knows. Everybody knows how he's going to vote. We all know. President Jefferson, who hates Marshall. Madison, they know. Marshall starts to read, and he says, Thomas Jefferson's a low-down, dirty dog. Madison's worse. They threw away that letter. It had the presidential seal on it. It had signatures on it. It was in the envelope. Everybody else got their stuff. Marbury didn't. Therefore, Marbury should get his judgeship. And everybody went, "Oh, we knew it. Oh, Jefferson, you stink, Jefferson." And Marshall said, "Wait, I'm not done with my sentence. I'm not done." And Marbury should get his judgeship, comma, semicolon. However, we have a problem. The problem is that Mr. Marbury took his case directly to the Supreme Court using a writ of mandamus. Well, in the Judiciary Act that said you were allowed to use a writ of mandamus to take a case directly to the Supreme Court. Well, gosh, that's a problem because you see, in the Constitution of the United States of America, it says the Supreme Court is an appellate court, and therefore you can't use writs of mandamus to get to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court only has original jurisdiction on state versus state or state versus country, and really, really big cases, but not an individual versus another individual. They don't have original jurisdiction. Well, now this is a problem. Because Congress passed a law that said the Supreme Court could do a writ of mandamus, but the Constitution says this. And Chief Justice, I hope you're paying attention to this right here. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Marshall, said, "Therefore, since we have a problem, Congress passed a law that is directly against the Constitution. Constitution says A, the law says B. Using the power of the Supreme Court, which doesn't exist yet until the very next sentence that I'm about to say, next half of the sentence, I now am giving myself power, the Supreme Court power, to knock out a law, to find it unconstitutional." And everybody in the courtroom went, "What did he just do?" And the people who were paying attention said, John Marshall just gave himself and the Supreme Court power to basically veto laws, to find laws unconstitutional. So if a Congress passes a law, the Supreme Court says, nope, that's against they can get rid of that law. It's kind of like a veto power. They didn't have that before. And John Marshall just gave it to himself. And everybody was like, wow, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. And meanwhile, William Marbury goes, excuse me, hi. Do I get my judgeship? And John Marshall says, no, you don't get your judgeship. Even though Madison and Jefferson are low-down dirty dogs, unfortunately, Marbury, you chose to come to my court first using a writ of mandamus, which was unconstitutional, and therefore, no, you don't get your judgeship. And Marbury said, but John Marshall, aren't you the one who told me to use a writ of mandamus to come to your court so you would vote for me? And Marshall said, oh, is that right? Huh. Interesting. Now, how did Thomas Jefferson react? Thomas Jefferson, when he first heard, he was like, yay! Marbury didn't get it. And why would Marshall not give it to him? Because they're good friends, they're Federalists. All the Federalists said, yay! Marbury. Wait, what? Marshall did what? Marshall gave himself power. Oh. Marshall's going to be on the court. Let's see, Jefferson's going to be president for 8 years. Marshall's going to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for over 30 years. Anyway, that's Marbury versus Madison. So Marbury versus Madison is the most important Supreme Court case, and it establishes the judicial review, the ability of a court to find a law of Congress unconstitutional and therefore making it null and void. The court can overturn a law. That's pretty heavy. All right, we'll come back with some more exciting John Marshall cases because he has many of them. I'm done with this one. All right, be good.